Welcome to the Veterinary Financial Podcast, where we discuss financial freedom and professional success. I'm Meredith Jones, a veterinarian and financial planner for vets. Over the past few weeks, I've been answering the same student loan recertification questions over and over from clients and members of the Debt Free Vets Facebook group. I thought I would put them all in one episode, so let's get right into this. I'm going to talk about your top 10 questions about recertification. So number 1, do I actually have to recertify? If you are on an income-driven repayment plan for your student loans, then yes, you do have to recertify. This question comes up because it's been, for a lot of people, it's been a while since they've had to recertify their income. During COVID, people were not required to recertify, and then the recertifications kept getting extended past that. There are even some people who are not required to recertify their income actually until as late as January or even February 2027. But it is important to know when you have to recertify because some people have already had to recertify or their dates are coming up due very, very soon. Number 2, how do I know when my recertification is due? So your loan servicer will notify you. If you want to see when your recertification date is and when that's coming up, a couple different ways to find that out. One is you can log into studentaid.gov. Sometimes you need to get into your list of loans to be able to see it. You can also look at your loan servicer's website. The way to find your recertification date on your loan servicer's website, you may need to click into the details for a specific loan that has a balance to see your recertification date. And so it might say recertification date, it might say IDR anniversary date. So there's a couple different ways that might be named. The other thing that's really important to know is that whatever that date is probably not actually going to be the deadline from your loan servicer, because the deadline from your loan servicer is generally 35 days before your actual recertification date. So an example of that is if you had a due date, say on October 20th, then your loan servicer would tell you that your recertification is actually due on September 15th. So it's important to know that. The other thing, as far as how early you might be notified that you need to recertify. So let's take that October 20th example. So you're generally going to be notified by your loan servicer 3 or 4 months ahead of that date that you have to recertify your income. And so you're always going to know at least a couple of months in advance of the actual due date from your loan servicer. So they will give you advance notice. They're not just going to spring this on you, which is great. So it's important to make sure your email address is up to date with your loan servicer and check your email regularly. And whenever you get a notice from your loan servicer, go ahead and read it. Go ahead and open that up. If you need to log into your loan servicer's website to be able to read it, do that and read the entire notice. That's something that I've seen some people, because of course, student loans can be overwhelming. They'll see that they have a note from their loan servicer, but they don't actually open it right away. And if it's your recertification deadline, or for folks who are switching off of SAVE, if it's your SAVE deadline, then either of those is a really important date, and it's something that you're really going to want to pay attention to. So let's go to number 3. What happens if I miss my recertification deadline? Missing your deadline can affect your payment. If you truly don't recertify your income on time, what can happen is they can take, because they don't know what your income is, so they don't know how to calculate your payment. So what they do is they default to generally the standard 10-year payment. That, of course, is the opposite of what anyone on an income-driven repayment plan generally wants. They're going to default to that date. So it's really important to make sure that you don't miss your deadline. And of course, waiting until the last minute can create unnecessary stress. I think of this a couple different ways. So for veterinarians, Generally, if your deadline for recertification is coming up in the next 3 or 4 weeks, I would say go ahead and turn in your application because, they're going to then take some time to process that. Then they're going to give you your payment that's generally due the month following when you turn in that application. That's if they process it on time. I am more recently seeing notices where somebody will turn in their recertification application and they'll get an email that says, hey, you're on a 60-day forbearance while we process your application. So that's not unusual. It also doesn't always take 60 days for your application to fully process. They might send you that notice and then a week or 2 later, you're recertified and everything's good. But they have routinely been sending those 60-day, I've even heard of some 90-day notices that they're like, hey, we're going to put you on a forbearance for this time frame. For vets, it's really important not to wait until the last minute for a few different reasons. It's not great for anybody, but one of the things I think about is, what if somebody waited until the last day and they lose a patient that day? Or they have to work really late that day. They get an emergency surgery that they have to do for their best client's pet or their technician's client's pet that day, and they stay until very late that evening because of an emergency or well past their shift, and then they forget because they had such a long day, or they forget because, oh my gosh, they lost a young patient and no one was expecting it, and they just had an awful day. That's the other thing that I think about when I'm thinking about folks waiting until the last minute. The other reason not to wait until the last minute is because there have been lots of errors in the IDR applications recently, unfortunately. And so waiting until the last minute can mean, if I'm having trouble with the online application, now I need to find the paper application so that I can turn that in, or people needing to call their loan servicer for various reasons because of a question that they have. It's something that I would, you don't want to do it too early, but you also don't want to wait until the very last moment to turn that application in. So if you run into technical issues or you need to gather additional documentation, maybe you thought, you thought that you were going to be able to pull your pay stubs up and now the website's not working with whatever provider your employer uses, something like that. So reasons not to wait until the last minute. Okay, number 4, can I use my current income instead of my tax return to recertify? So the answer to that question is yes, you can. You can use your current income. You always want to use whatever is more beneficial for you. So if your income has dropped, then using your current income may make sense compared to using your tax return. And you might even want to pull your tax return and look at your adjusted gross income, because if they use your tax return, that is the number that they're going to use. And so that's on line 11A of your federal tax return, your 1040. So whatever that adjusted gross income is, that's what they're going to use when they calculate your payment. If you give them some sort of alternative documentation of income, so that is like a pay stub or a W-2, or there's something called an employer letter where you can either have your employer write a letter, or if you're self-employed or new to being self-employed, you can write a letter. So different ways of documenting your income. All of that to say, if your best representation of your income is going to be your tax return, that's what you're going to want to use. If your income has dropped and it makes sense to turn in a pay stub instead, then you can absolutely do that. If you're using a pay stub, keep in mind that they may be using the gross income on your pay stub. So they now have documentation out there that says that that is by default what they're going to use is the gross income. So if you, for example, are maxing out your 401k, you have a lot of pre-tax deductions from your paycheck. It may make sense in that situation to actually use your tax return instead of using your pay stub because they wouldn't take into account the fact that you're maxing out your 401k. Other reasons that you might look at using your current income instead of your tax return would be, okay, if you are on maternity leave or disability, if you have, like I said, changed to a lower paying job, if you are taking any sort of leave from work, whether that is medical leave, whether that is even a sabbatical. You could, if your recertification is coming up at the same time that is going on, then absolutely use your current income if that's going to be more beneficial for you. And that's going to represent your current income. So what they're asking for on the application is for your income documentation based on your tax return or your current income at the time that you submit that application. Okay, next question, should I recertify my income early? So usually the answer to that question is no. And so if your required deadline is months away, there's often no benefit to recertifying early. They can actually, and they have done this recently, they have actually taken recertification applications early. And even if your recertification was, say, like 3 months from now, if you turn it in now, they might say, okay, well, next month your bill is going up because we've got new documentation for you. So in that case, it wouldn't be to your benefit to recertify early. You also, and I get this question all the time, you also don't have to recertify your income early if your income increases. So if your income goes up because you are working a bunch of relief shifts or you switched to an emergency job and your income increased, you do not have to recertify your income until you are due for a recertification again. Really, the only time you'd probably want to recertify early is if your income has dropped significantly and recertifying or recalculating your payment would be beneficial for you. Number 6, what if I'm on SAVE? Do I have to recertify? So if you're on SAVE, you'll need to transition to another repayment plan. And you will get a notification soon if you haven't already gotten it from your loan servicer. So it's going to come directly from your loan servicer with a 90-day deadline. And so those 90-day deadlines, they started on July 1st. And one of the loan servicers, Nelnet, they've said, hey, it might even be until March 2027. It might take that long for us to get all of the 90-day deadlines sent out. But of course, whenever you receive that letter, your clock for your 90-day deadline has started. And you will be required to recertify your income when you switch off of SAVE. I get a lot of questions because people on SAVE have logged into their loan servicer's website, and a lot of them are seeing 2028 recertification dates listed for themselves if they're on SAVE. Just know that you will not be able to wait until 2028 because you'll be required to switch plans. And when you switch plans, you are required to recertify your income at that time. And of course, the best repayment plan for you is going to depend on your eligibility and your overall strategy. And so if you haven't listened to some of our episodes about the SAVE transition, I would encourage you to go back over the last few months and take a look, and we can help you out there. Number 7, why does my payment estimate just look completely wrong? I'm hearing this because there are some errors in the application. We have seen some estimates that clearly didn't make sense. So we have seen payments listed on the application that are too low when people go to recertify, like $50 a month IBR payments when they're not supposed to see that. That was a specific bug, and I think some people are still seeing that right now. We are also seeing some payments that are too high. So one specific bug that we have seen recently is if you are filing taxes, married filing jointly, and both spouses have loans, we have seen that some people are getting payment estimates that are based on the full household income rather than being split between the spouses like it's supposed to be. So if you both have loans, there is supposed to be what they call a prorated split, where the total household income is split up according to how much you borrowed, and then those payments are basically split accordingly to represent in total what the household income is. If only one of you has loans and you're married filing separately, then it's just going to be based on the full household income. So that's something where if you are married and you have not looked at whether filing your taxes married filing separately would save you money on your student loan payments and save you money overall once taxes are considered, definitely something to look into. It is something where I've seen a lot of veterinarians save a ton of money by filing taxes married filing separately. So definitely look at that if you haven't looked at it already. Because of the errors that we're seeing on the application, just know that if something seems off, don't panic. Don't assume it's correct just because it's on the screen. And if you see something that's wildly off, check with a student loan calculator or book a consult with us so that we can run the actual numbers and see, okay, does that payment estimate line up with what our estimates are on the calculator? And if it doesn't match, then we've got a strategy that we can point you to for, okay, this is where we need to go with this next. I am also seeing folks who, when they actually run it in a student loan calculator, whether that's in a consult or outside of a consult, they find that it is right and it's just higher than what they expected it to be. A lot of that comes from the fact that people's incomes have increased, sometimes really significantly over the past few years because of COVID, but they haven't had to recertify during that time. Then they are finding that, oh gosh, I didn't realize my payment was going to be that high. And so we do have some folks who are going to be making some adjustments to their budgets over the next year or so because of that. The other thing with payment estimates looking wrong is it's not always just the payment estimate. Sometimes it is the availability of the plans. So I've had people, especially folks who are on pay already or are eligible for pay and wanting to, say, switch from save to pay, for example. They go to fill out this application, and even though they're pay eligible, they're not seeing it on the application. And some of these people are already on pay and they're not seeing it on the online application. And so they're having to submit paper applications right now. That's another reason, like I said, not to wait till the last minute. And if you need to submit a paper application, just know that you don't have to snail mail that. You can actually fill it out and then upload it to your loan servicer's online portal. I would suggest doing that and also submitting it along with income documentation, just so that you make sure that they have everything that they need to process that application. Okay, question 8. I'm married. Does my spouse's income count when I recertify? It depends on your tax filing status. So if you file your taxes married filing separately, they're just going to look at your income. If you file your taxes married filing jointly, they're going to look at the household income when they're calculating your student loan payment. And so it's more important than ever to know if married filing separately would save you money. Question 9. Can I recertify again if my income changes? So I get this question because some people are burnout and they want to reduce their hours, reduce their work schedule by 1 day a week, or go to a lower stress job that is going to result in a lower income. And so the answer to that is yes. It's not exactly recertifying at that point. It's actually having your payment recalculated. But if your income decreases, you can have your payment recalculated. And what you do is you go to the same place that you would go to submit your recertification application, which is studentaid.gov/IDR. And if you wanted to recalculate, you would select the first option, which is recalculate my payment If you're recertifying, then you are selecting the third one, which says manually recertify. And so that's what most of you who are thinking about recertification, you'll be selecting that third option. For number 10, I wanted to talk about some of the biggest mistakes that I'm seeing people make right now. And so it's not exactly a question, but it's more of the biggest themes that I'm seeing. So one is waiting until the last minute to recertify and then running into errors and panicking, unfortunately. Another is getting advice about recertification from Facebook groups without realizing that someone else's situation may not apply to yours. Recertification questions may not be something that you can crowdsource. Assuming that the payment estimate on the application is final if you're submitting pay stubs, that's another thing to just have on your radar. If you are submitting pay stubs, so they actually change the application so that they ask you to plug in what your income is, and then you just gave them a pay stub that they are going to actually use, and your loan servicer is going to take that pay stub and figure out, okay, here's what your payment's going to be. So if there's a difference between the number that you plug in on the application when they ask, hey, what do you make, and what is on that pay stub, then the estimate for your payment based on the application may not be exactly what your payment ends up being. I've also seen, because I always assume, because it is what is written by the Department of Education, I always assume that they're going to use the gross pay when they're calculating based on a pay stub. But I have seen some cases where there's one particular loan servicer that is calculating the payments. It looks like they're calculating based on the net pay, which is fantastic. And it results in a lower payment for those folks. But maybe they plugged in the gross pay sometimes, because that's what I told them to do. And then they get a lower payment than expected. So that's one of those, we're happier with a smaller payment, and we'll take that. The other theme that I'm seeing is just ignoring notices from the loan servicer, because this whole process just feels overwhelming. Definitely want to call that out. A lot of changes with student loan repayment plans over the past few years, and just extending those recertification deadlines. But I will say that almost everyone I walk through a recertification application with, when it comes down to it, it doesn't take that long. It takes about 10 minutes at the most. Most people say, gosh, that was way easier than I thought it was going to be. So I hope this episode helped answer some of the questions you've been having about recertification. The biggest thing I want you to take away is to stay calm. Don't let the process overwhelm you. Student loan rules are definitely complicated, and there's a lot of information circulating right now, which can cause some confusion. If your situation looks different from someone else's, that doesn't necessarily mean something is wrong. It just might mean that you're on a different timeline or a different path. Maybe you've got a different strategy with your student loans than they do. And as you're recertifying, keep in mind these 3 things. Know your deadline. Don't rush into decisions just based on what you're seeing other people do. And if you're not sure which option is best for you, ask for help before you submit your application. If you're realizing that your situation's a little more complicated than what we covered today, or if you're trying to decide which repayment plan makes the most sense for your goals moving forward, we'd be happy to help. At Vet Debt Experts, we offer 1-hour student loan consults where we'll review your loans, run the numbers, and help you create a personalized strategy. You can learn more and schedule a consult at vetdebtexperts.com. And until next time, take care and continue your path to financial success. This podcast is for informational and educational purposes only and should not be considered individualized financial advice. If a specific investment is mentioned, it should not be considered a recommendation or endorsement to buy or sell the investment. All investments involve risk. Past performance does not guarantee future results. You are encouraged to seek the advice of a financial professional before implementing any investment strategies discussed. Yay, compliance!